the Global Ethnobotany Research webinar series. I request before we begin to all the participants to kindly be on mute so that we can have a smooth webinar. The Global Ethnobotany Research webinar series was started with an intention to bring ethnobotanists across the world together on a common platform and connecting them with students to share their research work with students who want to know more about ethnobotany, this subject that has fascinated people from a long time now, and has also proved to be a very important field in the subject of science and research and the future. So today we have a very special guest with us, and we are very thankful to him to accept our request, Professor Ladislav Kokoška, who's the head of the Laboratory of Ethnobotany and Ethnopharmacology, Faculty of Tropical Agri-Sciences from the Czech University of Life Sciences, Prague, Czech Republic. This webinar is organized by the Center for Conservation of Natural Resources, the University of Transdisciplinary Health Sciences and Technology, Bangalore, India, and the Tropical Botany and Ethnobiology Lab tribe from the Faculty of Tropical Agri-Sciences, Czech University of Life Sciences, Prague. We are all very excited to have you all here from across the world. We can see that there are participants from India, Europe, America, and many other parts. So thank you so much for joining and for your time today. Before we begin, I would just request Dr. Karim to give a brief introduction about TDU and CCNR and its work, so that we all understand their work and try to hear from Dr. Karim. Yes, Dr. Karim, I request
you, Nishant. Thank you, Nishant. I'm very happy that we are just continuing this 11th series for this ethnobotany activity. And I'll just say, I'll not take much of your time. I'll just say, because most of you must be knowing, who don't know, I'll just say a bit about what TDU is. TDU, the University of Transdisciplinary Health Sciences has been evolved or has been born from the Foundation for Revitalization of Local Health Tradition, which has been conceived in the year 1993 with the focus to revitalize India's medical heritage. And in 2014, due to the good work which we have done in the case of by the foundation, we have got the status of the university status. And some of the highlights which we could really done in the case of the field, different departments. One of the department is Center for Conservation of Natural Resources, which is hosting this webinar. And some of the important major highlights that we have done is finding out within the country what are the rare, endangered, threatened medicinal plants which are there in the country, in every state of the country, and then seeing that where the population of these species have been found, and establishing the medicinal plant conservation areas in this area, in the country, and inventorizing all the places, the medicinal plants, the ethnobotanical documentations which have been done in the country. And this, we have a good herbarium in which we have the repository of the repositories have been there put, and we also have ethnoveterinary practices has been documented. We have a database of all these ethnomedicinal plants which have been used by the different ethnic communities. As you are aware that India has more than 4,000 and odd ethnic communities in India. So the documentation has been done. We work with the folk healers and who has the real knowledge in the country on medicinal plants and its uses. So we have made inventorize the folk healers in different states. And we also have labs which shows the classical, the real ethnic knowledge with the modern science, trying to work on that. And also the food systems, a separate department on ethnic food system where that has been documented and see that how it has been mainstreamed it. And also a hospital which is really taking care of the traditional knowledge system, is being treated in the form of traditional knowledge system, and see that how the modern science can also be integrated in this hospital. So this is in brief what we are trying to do, and I'm very happy that people from different parts of the world has been registered towards this webinar, and I'm surely expecting that this will be very, very fruitful because the expert who has come has really, will get introduced now, has really worked a lot, and you can see that the students, the staffs, all really get benefited. Thank you. Thank you, Nishan.
Thank you, Dr. Karim. Now I request Dr. Zbigniew, who's the head of Tribe, to just give a brief introduction about Tribe and also an introduction to Professor Ladislav Kokoška, who will be giving the talk today. So over to you, Zbigniew. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nishant, very much. Welcome all. I'm very happy to be in this webinar today. Yeah, as Dr. Karim already said, we organized this webinar together with the TDU, and our team Tribe is basically, as the Professor Ladislav Kokoška's lab, we are part of the Department of Crop Sciences and Agroforestry of the Faculty of Tropical Agri-Sciences. And within our team, we manage the herbarium of the faculty, where we have the plant specimens collections for identification of the plant species, as well as the economic botany collection. And so in terms of the botany, we serve for the identification of the or taxonomic identification of the useful plants, which we inventory and collect within our studies. And regarding the ethnobiological aspect of our work, we focus basically on the three domains of one is ethnobotany, the field studies where we document the folk perceptions, categorization of the plants according to traditional knowledge, and uses of the wild plants, especially from the categories of food and materials, and in the some of them in the food medicinal context. The second one is the agrobiodiversity assessment, focusing on plants. So we document the perceived categorization of the plant resources traditionally cultivated in the farmers' fields, and their intraspecific diversity, including the traditional varieties and species. And finally, the third focus is framed by the human ecology and biocultural diversity. So we analyze the traditional botanical knowledge in the context of the landscapes, agricultural landscapes and natural ecosystems managed by the indigenous people. So this is basically about our Tribe Lab, and I'm very happy that I can shortly introduce Professor Ladislav Kokoška. Welcome, Ladia, here. And Ladia is my long-term friend, as well as the colleague at our faculty, and we worked together quite a long time since my Ph.D. studies, where Ladia was one of the, let's say, informal advisor of some of my experiments, and I am very thankful to him that we had this time together, an opportunity to work at the beginning of our both of our teams. And laboratory of which is led by Ladia is the laboratory of ethnobotany and ethnopharmacology. So it focuses on chemistry and biological activity of tropical and subtropical useful plants, especially on medicinal plants used in traditional medical systems in these tropical areas. I think Ladia will say much more about his research orientation. So just this is for the brief introduction. Ladia is the full professor at our faculty and is teaching the courses of economic botany and the special crops, including the medicinal and aromatic plants, and is heading the very well-equipped lab for these chemistry and biological activity experiments, and so that we cooperate in that the evaluation of the ethnopharmacological properties of the medicinal plants. So that's for the brief. I think that's the time to give a word to our main speaker today. So thank you very much, and welcome all.
Nishant, you're muted. Nishant, you're muted, huh?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Zbigniew, for introducing Professor Kokoška. Now let's move on to the main talk. Now I request Professor Kokoška to share his screen and kindly request him to begin his talk. Thank you.
So do you see the presentation?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So good morning from Prague. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to present you results of ethnobotanical research, which we performed with my team in, I can say, exotic Polynesian islands named Samoa in the period 2014-2015. It was originally announced that my lecture will be focused mainly on the foods, but I added also the short part on the pharmaceuticals because I suppose that it could be also interesting for some of you. So let me start with brief general introduction. I think all experts working in the area of ethnobotany know that the main importance of the ethnobotanical research lies in the areas of conservation of biological diversity, preservation, recovery, and diffusion of the local knowledge and wisdom, and identification and development of new economic products. My lab, which is Laboratory of Ethnobotany and Ethnopharmacology, is focused mainly on this aspect. That means identification and development of new economic products. What are these like possible products? They can be foods, they can be some materials, for example, for construction, they can be chemicals, for example, pharmaceutical drugs, they can be plants, like ornamental plants, and they can be genes used for some breeding. Again, my lab is mainly focused on these foods and also on the chemicals, mainly on the pharmaceuticals that can be used in like human health, but also in animal health. And we are also working in some area which is focusing the chemicals that can be used in agriculture, especially in plant protection. So I think it's now well known that some locally used plants, locally used crops, also known as underutilized or neglected crops, they can be sources of valuable nutrients, and they can significantly contribute to the health and nutrition of the local, but also, let's say, global population. There are few examples of the plants or crops that they have been used for the generations by the local people in some specific areas, and based on the new, like modern phytochemical research and research in nutrition, they became to be worldwide traded commodities. There is an example of fruit which is called kakadu plum. This is tree originated in Australia, and the fruits of this species were used for a long time by local Aborigines as like food, as they were consumed as fruits. And the recent research showed that the content of vitamin C in these fruits is even 100 times higher than in the common fruits that we consider as classical sources of the vitamin C, like citruses, orange, lemon, and whatever. So you can see that this is really huge difference. And based on that, the new products, for example, food supplements and functional foods and whatever, they can be developed. You can see another examples like camu camu from South America or acerola and so on. You can see they also have a much higher contents of the vitamin C than these classical fruits that we are commonly consuming. In case of contribution of ethnobotany to drug discovery, I am here showing the most famous and the most typical example. Like by studying the traditional, like ancient text of traditional Chinese medicine, the professor Yu Tu discovered the Artemisinin, this compound, which is currently used for production of the anti-malarial drugs that are very efficient against plasmodia, especially resistant strains of plasmodia. And this is very efficient treatment, which was discovered based on the traditional knowledge, because this, like Artemisia annua as a herb that was used in traditional Chinese medicine for treatment of malaria, and she got the inspiration from that, and then she discovered that compound. This is nowadays very important pharmaceutical drug, and the importance can be, I think, proved by the fact that she received in 2015 Nobel Prize as the highest evaluation of the scientists. So that was just like brief introduction, which I was trying to illustrate which kind of focus is following my lab. And now I would like to show you particular examples of our research that we performed in Samoa, and which was focused on underutilized crops and medicinal plants. We are always trying to identify some health problem which is typical for the region where we are performing the research, and the Samoa was just one of the places where we are doing this research. Focus of my lab is mainly on Southeast Asia and the Pacific, so we had projects in Cambodia, Philippines, Thailand, and whatever. So this is just one example. And as I said, we are always trying to identify also some health problems in the area where we are performing the research, but it should be also something that could be applicable for the, let's say, European society. For that reason, we were focusing on underutilized crops with some special nutrient contents, and also for medicinal plants with some special activity. I will explain that later more in details. So first, few words about Samoa, because I suppose that not everybody is fully familiar with this area. Officially, it's independent state of Samoa. It's the belonging to Polynesia, so that means they are the islands in the Pacific. There is a larger island which is called Savai, and a smaller island which is Upolu. There is a capital which is called Apia. There are several other small islands around. The Samoa is divided into the two parts. This independent Samoa is like independent country, and the second part is the American Samoa. This is belonging to the US, but of course I will talk about this independent area. You can see that this is very small country, and the population is also very small. It's about 200,000 whole population, which is in comparison with some other countries, for example, in comparison with India, really something pretty different. So why Samoa from the point of view of the flora? You can see that the number of flowering plants there is pretty limited. It's somewhere between 500 and 600, which is really a small number. But you can see that there is a high ratio of endemic species, which is like giving the higher chance to discover something which is unique, new, and not very well known yet. You can see that relatively high number are also edible plants, but not all of them are like agriculture crops. So there is still a lot of plants that are like edible. They are eaten, for example, as wild plants or just grown as underutilized, but they are not classical like agriculture crops. And of course, Samoa has still a very well preserved the tradition, and it's really country with huge cultural heritage and tradition, which is still very well maintained. For sure, there is some influence of like the, let's say, the modern aspects of the life, and the life is they're changing also. I will illustrate that also later, but still they are the places where this tradition is still very, very strong. So this is the ideal area for ethnobotanical research, rich cultural and plant diversity, if I will simplify it and summarize it briefly. So what was the problem? What is the problem of the halt now? If you have a look at that graph, you can see that in comparison with the average of region, the 66, almost 67% of female population in Samoa in 2008, they are a little bit older data, but they are not like newer one, but the situation is getting worse and worse, are obese, which is really like, of course, challenging in the case of the health of the whole population. What happened there? You can see the traditional lifestyle there, so that they are preparing their traditional food using the umu, which is the special like earth oven, which is using the lava stones and whatever. And you can see that their traditional food was something like the coconut as a like drink, then taro as a like some source of carbohydrates or like as a tuber crop, and the fish, because they are in the middle of the Pacific. But recently, the shift, really strong shift in the diet and lifestyle happened. And you can see this is the first McDonald's built in the Apia, in the main capital. And you can see that now this food, unfortunately, is becoming too very popular among the Samoans. And you can see that there is a like Coca-Cola, there is a fish burger, and there is a potato. So that means the basic structure is very similar like this one, but nutritional value is totally different. As this food is full of calories, but a lot of micronutrients is lacking. But micronutrients, they are very important for maintenance of the good health and especially related to the overweight and obesity. You can see many examples. I will just emphasize several of them. For example, calcium inhibits the formation of the fat cells. Magnesium, its low level in cells impairs personal ability to use glucose for fuel instead of storing it as a fat. So you can see important like minerals, but also vitamins. For example, vitamin E has been proved that it inhibits the pre-fat cells from changing into mature fat cells, or vitamin B3, which treatment with this vitamin is increasing weight loss hormone, which is produced by the fat cells. So you can see that various kind of minerals and vitamins, they are very important in case of the fight with the overweight and obesity. And this new food is not like supplying the population by these minerals or nutrients in the satisfactory level. So what we decided to do. First, we started with the inventory of the Samoan markets because we were planning to identify some underutilized crops that can be then analyzed for their nutritional values, and then they can be recommended for the like broader use for the population. So we identified 53 plant species, their varieties, genetic groups, and so on. And among them, the 5 were interesting underutilized crops. Adenanthera pavonia, which is locally called lopa, is eaten there. The seeds are roasted, and that is eaten then as a, for example, like peanuts. Then there is another plant, Inocarpus fagifer, which is called ife. The fruit is cooked and then eaten as a side dish, for example, as another legumes like chickpea or I don't know, lentils and whatever. What is interesting, there is a musa, which is musa and paradisiaca, which is group AAB, called Fei Samoa, which means Samoan banana. This is really huge banana, which is maybe double size of the Cavendish, classical Cavendish banana. And it has very delicate fruit taste. And this is grown specifically in Samoa. And this is not so much known about its nutritional value, even genetics, and so on. It's eaten fresh. There is a Musa troglodytarum, which is baked or boiled and eaten frequently with coconut cream. And there is, for example, Taca leontopentaloides, which is called masoa. This is tuber crop, and this is eaten fried, or this is used as a source of the starch, which is added to the food. So based on that, we collected the data about the use, we collected the samples, and then we started the laboratory analysis. And the results were or are very interesting. For example, in case of lopa, which is sold in the markets in these small plastic bags, and this is in this roasted form, very popularly eaten, has a very high content of calcium. If we compare that with soybean and peanut, so that means the comparable like legumes, and you can see that the content is much higher. Also magnesium, you can see that it's significantly higher than in soybean or the peanuts. Vitamin E is lower than in peanut, but much higher than in soybean. And there is even salicylic acid present, which is not present in these two species. And salicylic acid is known to contribute to the cardiovascular health in general, and cardiovascular diseases are closely related to overweight and obesity. Additionally, the oil is consisting more unsaturated than saturated fatty acids, which is also important. There is a blood pressure lowering sodium to potassium ratio, and however, it also contains heat label antinutrients, but they can be, as it is common case of many legumes, easily destroyed by roasting, and for that reason, by the high temperature, and for that reason, the seeds are also roasted. Another species, Inocarpus fagifer, is a very specific legume typical for Polynesia. The pod has just one seed, which is pretty large, and in Samoa they are like crushing them, and they are using that, as I said, or they are roasting them, then crushing them, and they are using them as a side dish. And you can see that potassium here is very high in comparison with soybean and peanut. And also there is a relatively high content comparable with peanut of B3 vitamin, which is also, as I mentioned before, important for this obesity related problems. Again, there is a more unsaturated and saturated acids. This blood pressure lowering ratio of sodium to potassium is also very good. And there is also present broad spectrum of phenolic compounds, and they are antioxidants, and they also can contribute to the cardiovascular health. So what we were planning as a next step? We got into contact with the local companies, and we agreed that we can start to work on the development of new foods. They can be there is an example something that can be based on the fruits of lopa, like Samoan peanuts. They call it Samoan peanuts, lopa. It can be recommended for as a consumption for example, some product which is reducing risk of cardiovascular diseases or overweight and obesity and whatever. Unfortunately, because of this COVID period, this collaboration did not develop so much, and this product is still not existing. But I hope that now, when everything is getting more and more open and functioning again, we will continue with that, and we will finalize also this step. We also had a look at that from the different point of view, let's say from the point of view the agriculture production. The cocoa, this is the name of the cocoa in Samoa, is also very traditional product. Cocoa Samoa is very famous form of chocolate, which is very popular in some regions in Australia, New Zealand, and whatever. And this is very traditional way how the cocoa is processed in Samoa. And this is it's everywhere available at the local markets as in this form. That means in plastic cups, and it's called Cocoa Samoa. It's very popular there. So we suggested that something like forestry or intercropping systems of lopa and traditional crop of traditional Samoan crop, I mean, in case of the production, is cocoa. The intercropping of these two species can be very sustainable agriculture practice, because the lopa is used as a shading tree, and young trees of cocoa, they need the shade. Also, this is legume, so for that reason it's nitrogen fixator, and the cocoa needs also nitrogen for its growth. Seeds are processed by the same way, by the roasting. So the processing, like plant company working there can be the same. And it has even, Lopa has a valuable wood, so it can be the additional benefit from that. So this is also something that we were discussing as a project for the future. Everything related to that is recorded in the form of the movie, documentary movie that we made in Samoa. You can watch it if you will use this link on YouTube. And that was successfully presented in several film festivals around all of the world, I can say. So that was the part that was focused on the foods. And then let me briefly also mention something which is related to development of some pharmaceutical, even cosmetic products. We were also focused on the problem which is typical for Samoa. In Samoa, the injury is very common. It is also related to the traditional way of the life. So they are spending a lot of time in the water, and there are sharp coral rocks, and the injury is very, very common. Also, they are still using this traditional way of preparing of the food using the fire. So that means burns, even unfortunately burns of the kids. They are also pretty common. And there is also some insect which is causing some bites. So it's logic that the population there needed some preparations before these modern antibiotics and whatever for wound healing, and they really developed very strong tradition of the use of plants for wound healing. In that case, we did not perform some collection of the ethnobotanical data. That means we were not collecting the data from respondents as a sources of information for selection of the species. We used this book, Samoan Herbal Medicine, which is, in my opinion, great. That was published by American ethnobotanist Arthur Whistler, who unfortunately died recently because of the COVID, but he made really great work in the Samoa in case of the ethnobotanical inventories. His books were always for us very important and very strong help, I have to say. So we collected the species. You can see some typical plants that are used in Samoa for wound healing. And then we performed the testing of antimicrobial activity, especially against the microbes that are involved in infected wounds, as a Staphylococcus aureus. Then we were studying the effect of the extracts on migration of human dermal fibroblasts. That means this is something which is very important for physiology of the wound healing. And also we were assessing the toxicity to the dermal fibroblasts, because of course not all plants are fully safe, and especially the modern pharmacy is very strict in these aspects. And you can see that some species, for example, this one, Schizostachyum glaucifolium, was very efficient in case of antimicrobial activity. Extract was more effective than the oxacillin antibiotic positive control that was used. So you can see that this MIC values, the lower value means higher efficiency, were really, really low, and they are exactly for the extract very close to the single compound and too close to antibiotics. This is something which is usually activity of the antibiotics. But against these resistant strains, that was still efficient, oxacillin not. You can see that there were also some plants promoting this wound healing in vitro in cell cultures. And you can see that after, this is the control, that means the non-treated south, they were still less and less like migrating, but the like culture supported by these extracts, for example, in the Cerbera mangas, you can see that there was the like huge support of this migration, which is very important for the wound healing. But also, as I said, the toxicology is very important. And many of these plants were also relatively toxic to the skin. But there are at least two species, for example, this Schizostachium, which was not toxic at all. Unfortunately, it did not produce very strong effect on this migration of the fibroblasts. But if you have a look at this species, which is Psychotria insularum, this is real like endemic species in Samoa, you can see that there is some antimicrobial effect, and there is also some like effect on this migration of human fibroblasts, but there is like no toxicity. So we consider these two plants as very interesting for further research and maybe development of some pharmaceutical products. And the last research that we performed, because we were somehow positively stimulated by this very good results from this antimicrobial susceptibility testing. So we tested another endemic species, which are two species of the Myristica, like genus Myristica hyparygea and inutilis. And you can see that these MICs, especially for the first species, they are again much lower than the oxacilli, especially in the resistant strains. So we then continued with the GCMS analysis of the extracts. They were, in that case, hexane extracts. And you can see that in the Myristica hyparygea, there is main compound malabaricon A, and there are two isomers of otobain. And in Myristica inutilis, there is licarin A and licarin B as the main compounds. And especially these otobain isomers that are not very well known yet and not fully identified, we consider as structures that can be very promising for further research. So what will be the next step in this area? We would like to apply these extracts or the compounds to the nanofibers and create so-called antibiotic functionalized inorganic nanofibers. And then they should be used, for example, as impregnated wound dressings or in another form, for example, as cosmeceuticals and so on. So finally, I would like to thank like all members of my lab collaborating in this research, and also I have to thank the institutions, the local institutions. Without their collaboration and without their help, this work would not be possible at all. And this is especially Scientific Research Organization of Samoa, then University of the South Pacific, Alafua campus in Apia, and Wailima Botanical Garden. All of these institutions were very helpful, and they, as I said, without their help, the research would not be possible. But also we were collaborating with other institutions in Czech Republic, for example, University of Chemical Technology and Biomedical Center in Poznan. And finally, I would like to, of course, thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for that very insightful and interesting presentation. I'm sure that the participants have many questions. So before further ado, I would like the participants to kindly type out their questions Or if you want, you can raise your hands and directly ask your questions to Professor Kokoška. So over to the discussion session. If anybody has their questions, you can either type out your questions or you can raise your hands. Yes, Dheeraj, you have a question? Yes, go ahead. Thank
Good
you.
morning, everybody. I'm student of Professor Kokoška itself. Thank you so much, sir, for this nice presentation. I was just wondering if you have by chance also observed some plant species that can be also utilized in animal nutrition. Thank you.
Our research was not focused on that. Of course, the Samoans, they have a traditional like livestock production, especially the pigs, but their culture was always based more on, or was close, it was closely related to the ocean, so they are also doing a lot of fishing and whatever, and in this area this approach is not very common, or it's pretty extensive. So they have some species, they have some plants used for like support of animal health, but we were not focused on that, and even I think this is not the most typical area where this research needs to be performed.
Yeah, just I have one question. When you started taking the knowledge and trying to make into a products of the food, the so-called functional foods, did you use the same method and the product which the community used, or did you use a certain modification in such a way that this has been stored or it has been taken for some times? How was that linkage been done?
The old plan was to follow as much as it will be possible to traditional recipe, because of course the technologies in Samoa are food technologies are limited. So if we will create some very complicated processing way for the product, it will probably not be very feasible in case of the production there. For sure, if this product will be successful at the international level, then there can be some the food processing can be of course modified and improved towards to, let's say, extraction of more of these components that we want or whatever, but at the initial stage we were not counting so much for that. We are also following the strategy, let's say, low cost food and pharmaceutical products that are also that can be very useful and helpful for local community. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have another question, two questions. First is from Lucy. Were you already able to work on reintroducing the plants that are nutritionally interesting in the Samoan people's diet? Is the question, sir.
There is a recent effort to establish some germplasm collection of these plants in Samoa, which will be linked to this activity of Arthur Whistler, like this ethnobotanist working there. But we were not active in this area, but until now. But actually, we were now applying for some project which is targeting that, and if we will succeed with that, that would be very interesting activity. But as I said, we were not active in this yet.
Thank you, sir. Hopefully that answers the question. The next question is by Saumana Datta. The question is, may I know if algal cosmetic compounds from lab cultures are better than extracts from naturally found alga? Is the question.
uh, I'm not expert in the like the alginates are used for in this like wound dressing. This is like one of the most frequently used natural product in this area. But truly said, I don't know the details about like if there's something which is like produced in vitro or collected directly from the nature, if some of them are like better in case of the quality. I think there are always some advantages and disadvantages. This in vitro production will probably give the more standardized the product in case of the active compounds that we need. But the natural like product has another positive aspects like general like sustainability of the production, and even I can say like environment, they are more, this production is more, can be more environmental friendly and so on. So this is what I can comment on.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Well, the next question is by Dr. Noori, who is herself from CCNR. It's a very important question, actually, that goes around ethnobotany. It's will the product developed plow back the part of revenue into the community? Basically, access and benefit sharing is the question here.
Yes, for sure. Like this is something which is like basic, one of the basic questions or principles how the ethnobotanical work, which is focused on product development, must be working. And the first thing is that even the company producing this should be some probably, let's say, small or medium enterprise Samoan. So that means nothing which is like European or I don't know, Australian, something from New Zealand or whatever. That should be Samoan. And for sure, there should be some compensation of this traditional knowledge, which is in case of, for example, some of these products will be a little bit difficult to identify who is the owner of this knowledge. But in case of Samoa, I think, especially in case so small population, that should not be big problem to do it. And we were for sure counting with that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. The next question is from Dr. Poonam Arora. She says it was a knowledgeable lecture. Kindly let us know what approaches are used for investigating the therapeutic value of plants with high nutritional value.
They are basically the methods that are used for analysis of these nutrients are the basic analytical methods that are used for analysis of the common compounds. Like HPLC MS can be used for analysis of some vitamins, but of course, like more like simpler methods are existing for even microbial methods and whatever. And like for determination of elements like this ionization plasma spectroscopy could be used and whatever. There are several methods that are common. Also for, let's say, non-polar compounds, for example, oils and like fatty acids and whatever, GCMS like is commonly used. Like there are special machines or special equipment used for fiber determination and I don't know, proteins determination, but they are like not very complicated. For example, like Kjeldal and these Soxlet modifications and whatever.
Okay. Thank you, sir. The next question is by Dr. Atul Kumar Gupta, who's the who's from TDU. And the question is, any scope of getting this knowledge patented by the holder?
Sorry, could you repeat it?
Any scope of getting this knowledge patented basically is talking about patenting the traditional knowledge. Yeah.
Is the knowledge will be patented? So.
Yeah.
Dedicated to what specifically?
I think he's talking about the product. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there is the for sure knowledge specifically dedicated to these plants that we were studying, and this is what we collected during our like ethnobotanical inventory. But also some of this knowledge is mentioned in several books published this Arthur Wessler. There is usually way of processing and then way of consumption. So that means how if the processing is necessary, so if that means be roasted, cooked, boiled, whatever, and then how is it served as a food? If this is like used for baking of something, or if this is like mixed with some other ingredients and whatever. It's
now his question is something different. What he's asking is the knowledge which you have got from the community locally there, is that knowledge can be patented? What does your law says? Like in Indian context, if it is a unique knowledge of a ethnic community, we can patent that knowledge or the drug or the element or the output of that. Like that, there, when you're documenting the local knowledge from that community, can that be patented if it is unique? That's his question.
Yeah, like then. So you are not asking for this specific case, but in general, is it a general question or like the specific?
Yeah, specific in your thing and in general for other things also. In this case, whatever the research that you have done, can this knowledge be patented?
Okay, now I understand. Like the patenting of traditional knowledge is like itself, it's a very complicated issue. For sure, in case of these pharmaceutical products, if the compound will be then like modified chemically, that means for sure like natural compound cannot be patented. Like it's not invented by humans, it was produced by the nature. So only the derivatives of these compounds, of the natural compounds, they can be patented. Like, I mean, fully patented. There can be the use of some compound patented, but these patents are usually not very, they are not very safe, let's say. So in the case of the case of the compounds or the products which we were working with, they can be hardly patented, but for sure, if there will be some other research focused on the chemical modification of these isolated structures, then if the modification will be successful and if that will increase the activity, lower the toxicity, increase the bioavailability and whatever, that can be the patented in the future. For these food products, I have a doubt that will be very, very difficult. But for these pharmaceutical or cosmetic products, theoretically, it can be. But the results, it's hard to say that now because it's too preliminary.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. I hope that answers the question. Now, because of the lack of time, we will just take one more question, and it's a pretty general question, that is, what is, according to you, the future aspects of novel food in agrobiodiversity, in bioprospecting, and also largely the field of ethnobotany? What do you see? How the field, what potential do you see in the field, and what areas of research do you see that are going to be very relevant in the coming century in the field of ethnobotany? Thank you.
Okay, so like if you have a look at the situation globally in case of the food, the diversity of the food around all of the world is like decreasing, and it's unifying. We are still eating more and more similar food around all of the world. So that means formerly each community in the each separated part of the world had the typical foods, their typical preparations, and the typical ingredients. But now we are losing that, and everything is becoming to be more and more unified. But our bodies and our physiology, like microflora in our gut, and this is not the same. Like the people in Africa, they have a different than in South America. And when we are pushing the population to be so like uniform, I think there can be some health consequences like coming from that. And for that reason, the diversity, which is based on this traditional use in some modern like foods, in some modern form, like these novel foods and whatever, but based on the traditional knowledge and traditional customs, they will be, in my opinion, in the future important, because they will help to maintain this diversity that was at the beginning, and which is now losing.
Thank you so much, Professor Ladislav, for that wonderful lecture. I'm sure this talk has inspired many young researchers across the world towards this subject, and also given them a good picture about how to do an ethnobotanical study when you go to an area. Before I end, I found this very interesting Samoan proverb, which goes like this. It says, "Alele le toloa itue mau lava ilevai," which means that wherever the toloa bird, which is a bird in Samoa, may travel, it will always return and settle back to its native waters. So I think this for us is a very nice message as a human civilization. Whether we go to Mars or whether we go to any other planet, we are always going to come back to our native waters, to our native plants, to our indigenous plants. And so it's very important to conserve and discuss about traditional knowledge and indigenous knowledge, because if this knowledge, once it's disappeared, there's no way to get it back. And it's a fascinating world of traditional knowledge, plants, and a lot of other things that can help humanity a lot. So thank you so much for your time again, Professor. Today, before we end, I would just request everyone to turn on their cameras to have a group picture, because that's the least we could do to become, we are a small community. So let's just form a group and have a quick group picture for memory. Yes, I will take the picture at the count of 3. So I hope all your smiles are ready. Okay. So, yep, I'm just waiting for a few more people. So 1, 2, and here we go, 3. Okay, I'll take some more. It's good to see faces behind masks after a long time. So thank you so much, everyone, again for your time. We will be sharing the recording of this webinar on our YouTube page, and also to all your email IDs. A special thanks again to